Snow Day is the delightful 14th episode of Season 6 of Everybody Loves Raymond. This is directed by Halvorson, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And it starts off with Ray and Debra getting ready to go to the airport to go on vacation. Amy has come over to drive them. It's very clear as soon as Amy enters the house that it's very snowy. And it turns out the airport is closed. And also she broke up with Gianni, so she's not in the best of spirits. And then the power goes out. That's a lot of negativity in a very short space of time. And they go over to Marie and Frank's, and that's where the rest of the episode takes place. There's a lot of food there. Marie has put on a real spread, and Robert's there, which is a little awkward for like a second. And then it doesn't seem to be a problem with Amy and Robert. And it feels like it's good to see that they can spend time in the same room together. At least for me as a viewer, it doesn't seem awkward or uncomfortable. For this episode, that seems pretty promising. And then they're reminiscing about this New Year's Eve party, and then Ray begins to dance, and then Robert begins to dance. And then Frank asks Marie to dance because he wants to show them how to really dance. And it is so beautiful. It is such a lovely moment. And I'm welling up thinking about it. It's just, I love it when we get to scrape away Frank's exterior and to see the kindness and the goodness that he really is. And it's a really nice atmosphere. So nice that I was waiting for something to happen. I couldn't remember what happened. I hadn't seen this episode in a very long time. And it's Debra who ruins it. She's dancing with Frank. Everybody's having a great time. And she says to him, "I can't believe I'm actually having a good time with you." And there it is. Frank was genuinely hurt. He didn't get mad. He didn't get angry. He didn't say, "How dare you say that to me?" He walked away. He walked outside in the snow. And I don't think it was snowing, but certainly it was a very snowy condition. And it's horrible to see him hurt like that. And it was absolutely Debra's fault. There was no justification for what she was saying. And she said, "I'm going to go and speak with Frank. I can't believe I said that." And just as she's about to leave, Marie says, "I can." And we find out that Debra thinks she's better than everybody else. Or certainly better than the Barones. And that's the conversation for the rest of the episode. They're basically trying to goad her into saying, "Yes, I do think I'm better than you." And they basically start to assassinate each other, mostly with Ray. He says to her, "You think that my father, a known baboon's ass, is your equal?" How do you respond to that? I feel like Debra maybe does think that she's better than them in some ways. And in some ways, yes, she's not judgmental. She called Frank gross at one point. I don't think that was fair, but certainly she has maybe better habits than Frank. She's not as abrasive as Frank. She maybe thinks she's better than Robert for not having as many weird quirks. But I think she's very judgmental in her own ways. I think she's very quick to fly off of the handle. I think she has a lot of character flaws, which of course makes her a very believable, well-rounded character. But by no means is she better than them. But I think maybe she does think it. And as Ray is criticizing everybody, it's really awkward. And then he calls Marie a world-class Batinsky, and she is gleeful. It is such a strange atmosphere. And of course, you can say these things about your own family. But an outsider, and not that I'm saying Debra is an outsider, but put it this way, she and Ray could divorce. One would hope it would never happen. But they could divorce. She would no longer be part of the family other than through the children. Whereas blood family, you can say these things about your relatives. Nobody else can say these things. And Debra finally admits it. And I feel like I'm struggling to work out what I think about her outburst, because she finally says, "Fine, I think I'm better than you all. You're all nuts." First of all, yes, they are all a bit nuts, but any good family is. I feel like having this kind of dynamic is really beautiful to see. And I genuinely don't know if she finally confessed to how she truly felt, or if she just said it to get them to shut up. I feel like it's probably the latter, but with a sprinkling of the former. I feel like if deep down she genuinely didn't believe it, I don't think those words would have been able to leave her mouth. So I don't know what that says about Debra, but it was certainly a very interesting moment. And that's the bulk of the episode. And not a lot of variety happens, but it manages to sustain itself really, really well. And it's also not very visually engaging either. The whole thing is very dimly lit, but that's not a problem. There's so much going on. The characters are moving around a lot. There's still a lot to look at. It's still very, very effective. And Debra, after her outburst and calling everybody nuts, goes out to speak with Frank, and it's a really lovely moment. And the reason Frank was hurt is because he thought it was always him and Debra against the others. He said they're all loony and that it's, they're those two are the sane ones. And I've always thought that about Frank and Debra, that it's not necessarily them against everybody else, but Frank basically never has a bad word to say about Debra. And he clearly thinks of her as a daughter. And I do think that they have a very sweet, supportive relationship, and Debra really ruined that and basically revealed how she really feels about Frank. And that's going to hurt. Not because somebody said those words, but because Debra specifically said those words. And it was clear that Frank was hurting, but that was a really lovely scene. And then we end the scene with Ray, Debra, and Robert and Amy dancing, which was really, really lovely to see. And then Ray and Marie commenting that this isn't dancing, and that once they're tired, they'll sweep the floor with them. And it was a nice way to end things. It's a really brilliant episode, very well written, very, very well executed. The dialogue is brilliant. It's unsettling. It's so uncomfortable to hear these character assassinations, but it's done in a way that's funny and in a way with love, because you can't really say those things about somebody who isn't in your family or somebody you're very close with. And Marie's glee at being called a Badinsky, I just thought was fabulous. It's an enjoyable episode, needless to say. Snow Day is a really solid episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. All things considered, it's pretty fabulous.